Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Making It in Manhattan. For today's episode, we're going to be talking about 10 things I learned in the first year of marriage. If you can believe it, it's already been a year since my wedding, which I honestly cannot believe at all. I feel like I was just in the studio recording the wedding recaps and telling you guys all the details, but I thought that it would be a lot of fun to talk about 10 things I learned being a wife in my first year of marriage. So let's get started. So as I mentioned, it's been a year since the wedding, and in case any of you are just tuning in or you're new to finding me, I got married November 12th, 2022. We got married in Long Island at this place called Bourne Mansion. Dave and I really wanted like an old mansion vibe for the wedding. On our first date, we actually watched The Great Gatsby, so we've always loved the idea of like a big mansion party. So we went and we visited a bunch of different mansions in Long Island specifically, because I feel like Long Island is where the mansions are. And so we ended up finding Bourne Mansion and we just fell in love with it. And then I designed my custom wedding dress with Christian Siriano, and that was like a super fun process over about a year as well of prep and planning and fittings. And everything was just, it was perfect. If you haven't listened to the wedding recaps, I mean, I'm saying it's perfect, but like on the inside, I never want to do it again. Like wedding planning was the absolute worst. I hated wedding planning. And if you ask Dave, him and I will say the exact same thing. Like we were so excited to get married, but the wedding planning, it was another full-time job on top of two people who work full-time jobs to have another job thrown on top of us. And we had help. We had a wedding planner and a decorator. So like, I think just the pressure of it all too, like our wedding was featured in the New York Times, which was so incredible and amazing, but the pressures of social media definitely added another level and layer of stress to it all, in the sense of like worrying what other people will think. And it's funny, the other day I saw, I think it was Vogue or The Cut, do a post about how like there's so much pressure around weddings today. Like TikTok glamorizes everything and it's all about having like the perfect Insta-worthy wedding. But at the end of the day, you know, it's about two people who are in love and who want to spend the rest of their lives together. But you get caught up in all the details and all the stress and all the pressure. So after wedding planning was done, I think Dave literally wrote like to many years ahead and a lot less wedding planning on his Instagram, because we both never want to do it again. It was so stressful. Like at our wedding, I remember I grabbed him by the hands and I looked him in the eyes and I was like, we are done with wedding planning. Like the wedding planning is over. Like this is our wedding. Like we can just like enjoy it and we never have to plan a wedding again. So with that being said, a year has gone by in the blink of an eye. And I thought for any of you guys who might be engaged, or maybe you're getting into a new relationship, or you're talking about marriage, I wanted to chat with you guys about like 10 things that I learned in the first year of marriage. The past year has gone by in the blink of an eye, and I think something that a lot of people told me going into like getting married was, oh, the first year of marriage is the hardest. And I thought that was like a little weird, because Dave and I have been together 10 years, which is also like a really, really long time. So we've been together a really long time. So I personally didn't think the first year was going to be the hardest, and it wasn't. Like, full disclosure, people are like, if you make it through the first year of marriage, like you're set, which I think, which I'll get into, people fill your head with like all of these thoughts and worries and things, and cancel out the noise. Just focus on you guys, focus on your relationship and the two of you. So I wanted to just dive in and tell you guys like some things I've learned in the past year. Again, it was not the hardest year ever. Like the first year of marriage went by in a blink, and I'm like honestly scared, because I'm like, if all of them go by this quickly, like we'll be married for 20 years before we know it, which is like honestly like a really scary thing to think about, because we've been dating 10 years and it still feels like we just met. So jumping off of all of that, my first tip is that it just goes by really fast. I know I've just talked about that, but like cherish every moment. And it's funny, when I was growing up, my mom and dad used to always say, like, you think time goes fast now, just wait until you're older. And I always used to think that they were lying. Like at 14, I'm like, how could time go any faster? Like, it already feels like it's going so fast. So with that being said, like, really treasure the moments. Like, I remember it was like our 5-month anniversary and our 6-month anniversary, and I was like having, we were just doing like a little dinner at the house, just the two of us, to like make it special. But with that being said, like, treasure every moment, celebrate the little moments, the little anniversaries, because before you know it, you're gonna blink and it's gonna be 5 years, 10 years. Like, it really does go by in the blink of an eye. So just treasure every single second of it. My next tip is the next thing I've learned is to make your own rules. And I quickly mentioned, like, as soon as we got married, people fill your head with their thoughts, like, oh, when are you going to start having kids? Like, that was the craziest thing that I faced after I got married, which I guess, like, maybe I was expecting it a little bit, but not so much, was the fact of, like, people started commenting on my social media. People started messaging me that they thought I was pregnant. Like, it was so bad for my mental health, in the sense of people, like, I just got married in November, and like 2 weeks later, people were commenting like, I think I see a bump. Full disclosure, I am not pregnant, guys. And I don't know, one day, like, yes, maybe I would like to have a child, but not anytime soon. So with that being said, like, there's so much outside pressure to it. And there's there's family pressure for sure, of people being like, when are you buying a house? When are you having a kid? This and that. But then there's like social media pressure from people you don't even know, who are commenting on your weight and on what you look like and asking if you're pregnant. So make your own rules. There is no timeline. There's nothing you have to do in the first year of marriage. There's nothing, oh, now we're married, we have to do this. No. This is your life. Like, write your own stories, write your own rules, like, whatever works for the two of you. Marriage is different for every single person. And I think in today's society, like, marriage, like, a lot of people are afraid to get into relationships because it feels so definitive and forever. But, like, make it what you want to make it. Make it work for you. There are no rules. Kids, houses, jobs, careers. There's no timeline. Like, do whatever works for you guys. Okay, the third thing I've learned is you need to be really honest about your expectations. So, like, with that being said, there are no rules and there is no timeline. But if you personally have an expectation of, like, I want to have a kid in a year, or I want to buy a house in 2 years, like, you need to be really honest with your partner about these expectations. Because if they don't know about the expectations, like, how are you guys going to make them work? How are you going to accomplish things together? So something that Dave and I did before we were even, like, I don't know if we were engaged yet or if, like, we were only dating, but it was years ago now. We did this thing that, it sounds morbid, and I might have told you guys about it before or talked about it on social media, but it's called deathbed things. And it sounds very morbid, so I apologize for the name. Dave's even said to me, you need to think of, like, a less scary name, because it's called deathbed things. But essentially what it is that I made up was, like, I sat down and I had a conversation, and I was like, okay, so if you were on your deathbed and again, in 150 years from now, and you had any regrets or any things you didn't accomplish, what would those deathbed things be for you? And so I wanted him to be very honest with me. Was it, like, traveling to XYZ place? Was it buying a vacation house somewhere? Was it having, like, a certain kind of dog? Like, one day you want a golden retriever. I don't know. Like, I'm making these things up. But, like, what are your deathbed things? And you both need to talk about these. Like, this needs to be a conversation that all couples have before they get married. Because if their, like, long-term life goals, again, your deathbed things, don't line up with, like, what you see your future life like or what you want, then maybe this isn't the right relationship for you. But if you talk about your deathbed things and you're like, okay, yes, like, we can make that happen together. We can work towards that together. Like, you're a team in marriage. Like, you guys are a team. Like, you need to have each other's backs and be there for each other. So, like, set the expectations and be honest about your expectations. Talk about them. Talk about your goals. If you want to move to a new city, talk about it. Like, the only way you guys are going to accomplish things is by having a very, very open and honest line of communication. Again, I said this a little bit in Make Your Own Rules, but don't let others' opinions affect you. There's so much judgment online from people on, like, even just things on, like, when you send out, like, your wedding thank yous and, like, things that are so dumb and, like, did you invite this person to your wedding? And, like, there's opinions from everyone, aunts, uncles, like, and it never stops. Like, it literally never stops. You're married a year of marriage. Then you finally do have a kid, right? And they get off your back. Well, when are you going to have a second kid? Are you going to have a second kid? Oh, you just had your first kid. Oh, when are you guys going to buy a house? Oh, you have this house, but now, oh, don't you need a bigger house now? Because now you have, like, a kid. Like, there's never, ever going to be, like, not, like, I don't know, an Aunt Susie chirping in your ear, like, just passing judgment. You know what I mean? Like, it's this level of judgment of always trying to, like, make you feel not good enough. And, like, again, then once you have a kid, it's like, well, I did this with my kid this way. Like, oh, you let them have that medicine, that toy, whatever. I don't know. But there's always going to be opinions. But you need to make sure you and your partner are on the same side. Like, if people are coming to you with opinions, it could be a mother-in-law, it could be a father-in-law, it could be your mom, it could be whoever. You got to make sure you and your partner have your, like, thought and your opinion. So you need to talk about everything before you get married. So, like, and A, B, C, D, E, F, G doesn't come up to your husband or your partner and pull them and start chirping in their ear about something, and it's something you guys haven't really discussed. So now they have this idea about this one thing, you had a different idea which you never expressed. Shut out the opinions, talk to each other, communicate. Like, I know it sounds so silly, but, like, I couldn't imagine, like, I tell Dave everything, to the point where recently I was like, I think I need to get a therapist, because I, like, just unload on him all the time. But we've been together so long that he knows everything. He knows everybody in my life. He knows everything that's going on in my work and whatever. So I'm constantly venting to him. But with that being said, he then knows everything, and he knows what's going on. He knows my goals, my aspirations, my pain points, and things like that. So just don't let other people's opinions affect you. And then my next point is communication is key. And I said, if something's bothering you, say something, and you don't also always have to be right. So with that being said, like, I've talked to friends and, you know, who are just started dating somebody, and they're like, they just moved in, and they're like, oh, like, I really like them, but, like, this one little thing, like, irks me so much. I'm making this up. Like, they leave a towel on the floor. They don't hang up their clothes after a busy day. Whatever, I'm making this up. But, like, there's something that really bothers my friend. And I'm like, well, have you told the person that this bothers you? Like, is there something that they can do to correct this habit? And hopefully, like, you guys can work it out. Because what I've seen in the past is if you don't say anything and you just let that annoyance fester and get worse and worse and worse, you're going to explode. You're going to have, like, an all-out fight one day, and it's going to be related to something that has nothing to do with the fact that they've been laying their towels out or not hanging up their clothes. Like, they could literally be, like, 5 minutes late to something, and you're just going to explode because you've been, like, harboring up these emotions and these feelings. So with that being said, though it's a little bit of tough love, like, if I do something that annoys Dave, like, he'll tell me right in the moment, like, can you do, like, whatever. I don't know. I know for me, like, I'll come home, I just take my shoes off right away, and I, like, leave them everywhere. Or, like, I'll take my purse off, I just leave it on the counter as soon as I get home because I'm tired. But, like, we don't need stuff all around. So and the whole house is not my closet, unfortunately, even though I would like it to be. So you gotta talk to each other. You gotta communicate. And also, you don't always have to be right. And that's something, too, that I think takes time to learn, is, like, when you guys are having an argument, sometimes you're gonna be wrong. And that's okay. Like, be open to learning and growing and evolving and being able to, like, take constructive criticism when it's coming from a loving place. If it's coming from a place of like anger and rudeness and meanness, different story. But if your partner's coming to you and it's opening up and trying to tell you, hey, like, can we work on this thing together? It's been really bothering me. Be open to constructive criticism. I think I always have something I can work on. I can always be a better person. I am not perfect. None of us are perfect. We all have things we can work on. And your partner's just the closest person to you usually because they're with you so much. So they see these things, they see these flaws or these things that you could work on. So just communicate. Don't hold on to your feelings and don't let them bubble up to the point where then it becomes like a huge, huge fight. My next thing is work toward your goals together. So again, you need to tell your partner what these goals are and then make like a 5-year plan together. I'm not even kidding. Sit down and write it out of like, you want to move to New York City. Maybe you're listening to my podcast and you live somewhere else and you just got married and you in your heart of hearts want to move to New York City, but you've never told your partner you want to move to New York City. Go to your partner right after this episode, sit them down and be like, I had this great idea. We need to talk about deathbed things. And they'll be like, what is deathbed things? And then you'll explain it to them. But anyway, you need to tell them that you want to move to New York City and how, and that's a deathbed thing for you. Because deathbed thing for me is like a make or break. Like, you don't want to be 105 sitting there and being like, I never went to Fiji. Like, I never went bungee jumping. Like, something that is so big for you that you're like, if I never do this in my entire life, I will regret it. And then maybe they're like, okay, well, do you want to move to New York City forever? Or like, are you open to, hey, let's move to New York City for like 3 years and then maybe buy a house somewhere? Like, what, you need to be so honest and open about these. And then your partner, if they're the right person for you, you need to make a plan and work towards these goals together. So maybe it's like, okay, we open a joint savings account and every single week we're putting a little bit of money into this joint savings account because we're working towards the goals together. That's the word I want to like point out in marriage is like, you can obviously still have things for yourself. I always do. I have little dreams that are just for me, and you know, I go when I have my time with my snacks and my magazines. Like not everything needs to be for both people, but if it's like a big long-term goal, like a life move or something just huge like that, you need to make sure that your partner's on board and is rooting for you and wants you to achieve that together. If they're like, oh, hell no, I will never move to New York City, then I think you need to sit down and have like a more internal conversation with yourself and see if these are things that you're willing to compromise with. Maybe you move to Hoboken, maybe move to Jersey City. Again, with every relationship, talk about it, work together. But again, my togetherness point is like, if you're with a partner right now and you're like, yeah, they don't work with me on my goals, like they don't, you know, help me with my goals. And you might be like, how, you know, my partner doesn't need to help me with my job. You know how many photos Dave's taken for me? How many campaigns he's shot for me? Dave's not a photographer. I don't think he necessarily even likes photography or videography, but he knows that it means a lot to me, so he will help me with it. And, you know, with that being said, that's the sacrifice and the lovingness in a relationship that you want to make sure is just there for both of you guys and that you're both willing to help out. So my next is your partner is your biggest supporter. Like literally, I think that your partner should be like the number one in your life. Obviously, I'm so close with my siblings. They're all my best friends. I'm so close with my parents. But you want to make sure you and your partner are always on the same team, always fighting for each other. There's no discrepancies. Like if you pulled Dave and I aside and you're like, what are your long-term goals? I would hope, I think, that we would both say the exact same things. And what are your feelings on this? What is your thought on this? Like, if you had a kid or had kids, how many kids would you want? Like, these are all things that you need to talk about and communicate. And then your partner should be there supporting you, rooting you on. Like, and with your partner being your biggest supporter, like, as I mentioned, like, Dave helping me with photo shoots or, like, you know, I've helped Dave, like, restore some of his cars because he's very into old cars. I can't even drive, guys. Like, I have a license, but you do not want to put me behind the wheel. So we support each other. And that's the thing. You should want to help each other. Don't get me wrong. Like, if I'm not the person that he could go and have like a long conversation with about like a 1985 Mustang, though I'm sure he would love to. I'm open to listening for sure and like trying to communicate and give feedback and like support his hobbies and his goals. So you should both be supportive of each other's goals and hobbies. Also, no one should be like minimizing the other's goals. Like, I get messages from you guys about wanting to start on social media and posting, and you're scared about what your partner would think. No. Your partner should never like diminish your interests or your hobbies. You know how many weird hobbies I've gone through? At one point I was like, thought I wanted to be a jewelry designer. This was years ago, and I like bought hundreds and hundreds of beads online and started like making bracelets. And the other day Dave and I were like cleaning out this random dresser, and he found like a drawer just filled with beads. So but he never said to me when I was doing it like, that's dumb, that's stupid. He was like, oh, this is a fun like hobby, like if this is what makes you happy, you know, obviously everything in moderation. But like, that being said, I'm going on a tangent with this, but like, your partner should support you, even if it's the silliest hobby, the silliest thing, like whatever it should be. Like, you guys should really be supporting each other. My next thing I've learned is that still date each other. Really, like, we've been together 10 years. We've been married almost a year now, but you still need to go on date night. And it doesn't need to be every single week, but like a Friday night or a Saturday night. It could even be a Wednesday, Thursday, any day. If you find like a new restaurant or a new spot or like a museum or whatever it might be, go on a date with your partner. Like, get all dressed up, like plan a date night. And Dave and I do it, and I'll be like, hey, listen, what are you doing 2 Saturdays from now, this date? Like, I found this new restaurant, or like the Met does happy hour from 6 to 8. Like, I want to go on a date. And obviously, like, then we plan, we get all dressed up, we go to dinner, we go together. And it's important to like still do that. You know, you get so caught up in like ordering takeout and sitting on the couch, which, don't get me wrong, we do it all the time. Like, we love it. But I think planning those special date nights is really important. And we do sometimes like, we'll take turns. Like, I'll do a date night this month, he'll do a date night next month, where like he has to find something to do. So it doesn't all feel like it's on one partner, because that's also another thing. You don't want to feel like you're the only one bringing ideas to the table, which if you're the planner in the relationship and you love it, then that's fine. But sometimes it's nice that both people are planning, throwing in ideas. But I just think it's so important for any relationship, because, yeah, we've only been married 1 year now, but my hope is when we're married 5 years, 10 years, we're still going on dates. We're still going on date nights. And believe me, I'm realistic. I know once a kid comes into the mix and life gets busier and this and that, like, you can't go on a date every single week, and you can't. But even if it's like little things, like maybe it's you saw a new movie just came out on Netflix, and you're like, okay, like, I'm home an hour early. And believe me, I am a terrible cook, but I have done this before. Like, I'm like, I'll cook dinner, so then when he gets home, like, we can eat dinner and watch this new movie together. It doesn't need to be a fancy date that you need to spend a lot of money on. The littlest thing can be a date night, and the littlest, like, gestures are, you know, they really go a long way. And I think also something that, like, I didn't have written down, but figuring out like what the other person's love language is, and that's before you're even married, really. But like, for example, like, my love language is like words of affirmation and like physical touch, and Dave's love language is like action. So he is like if I cook dinner or something, like, that's very big for him, because that's one of like, that's his love language, is like actions, like, you know, showing, whereas mine's more like words of affirmation. So it's good to know what the other person's love language is, so you can really make sure that they're feeling like filled with love at all times, and they know how much you love them, because there should never be a question, like, you know, of any of that. Like, I think telling the person all the time, you know, that you love the other one also just makes for a happier relationship. My next is that nights are sacred in our house. So like, we work so much during the day, and it can't be every night, because I'm going to events like 3 nights a week usually, and sometimes if I can, I really try to bring Dave to events with me. But the nights that we are home, those are sacred to like spend time together, talk, communicate. So like all of the things I'm saying, it's like, well, when are we communicating? When can you? You're waking up at, 7 or 8, running out the door for work, working till 7 or 8. Like it's a crazy busy schedule, and the world we live in, like you're working 24/7. So for us, like these nights, even if it's like at 8 p.m. when we're both done working, like nights are sacred for us. And that's when we like really try to spend like most of all of our time together. So, maybe it's me saying no to like one less event a week, or making sure, okay, I'm going to be out all day, but then I'll definitely be home by 6. Like, again, communicating with the other and setting those expectations for what works for you, because for us, like that's when we can spend our time together is at night. So talking, eating dinner together, and just like talking about our days and what's going on in our lives. I think growing up for me, like my family, we sat down and we ate dinner together at the table every single night. Every night, really, I can't even think of like 10 times we weren't together. And I think those times are really important too, and also made me and my siblings like super close, because we'd all talk about our days. Like, even if you're literally 12 and you're going to school, like everyone, I have 2 sisters and a brother, and then of course my parents, like we'd all talk about what was going on in our lives. So we all knew what the other ones were up to. If you had a big sports game coming up, whatever it might be, we were all in tune with each other's lives. And I think the same goes for marriage, is like knowing what's going on in your partner's life is, I don't know, like, are things going well at work? Has their boss been like giving them a hard time? I don't know, I'm making this up, but like letting them feel like they can open up to you is so important. And then my last thing that I learned is to create your own traditions. So you both come in, 2 partners, you come in from different backgrounds, different lives, different families, and now you guys are becoming your own family. You're becoming one family. And I think it's great to look at things both of you have done in the past and then talk about what traditions you want to take from your past and bring them now into your new family. And then also what traditions you want to create for yourselves. So maybe there's something like, hey, neither of us have ever done this around, I'm making this up, Halloween, Thanksgiving, whatever. So we're going to do it together this year. Like, going to see like the Christmas lights in Brooklyn, or like going to cut down a real Christmas tree. Like I had never done that before I met Dave. Like my family would just like go buy one at a place that was pre-cut. So it's little things like that that I think are so important for you guys to like come together and realize like you're each other's family and you're starting this like new beautiful chapter. So creating your own traditions, writing your own rules, communicating, making time for each other, as I feel like obvious as they sound, sometimes it's not so obvious. Like if every night your partner's coming home from work and they're just going in the side room and playing video games for hours and not talking to you at all, like, and don't get me wrong, I think having your own separate interests and hobbies is so important too. So maybe it's like a couple nights a week they're doing their thing, but then a couple nights a week you guys are together and you're chit-chatting and you're communicating. I think, again, every couple has their own boundaries, is going to set their own rules, write their own rules. You don't need to feel like you have to do something a certain way, but make sure that you're open and honest and you're feeling happy with where everything's going, because at any moment, if you're not feeling happy at how your life is panning out ahead of you, communicate that with your partner so that you guys can work together to change that and to make it the life that you've always dreamed of. So my Making It in Manhattan tip of the week is to trust in the timing of your life. You'll meet your person when it's meant to be, and listen to your gut. So like, not everything's going to happen when you're expecting it to happen. Even, Dave and I were dating for 7 years before we even got engaged. Like, and I remember so many people would be like, aren't you upset you're not engaged yet? No. We met when I was 21. I wanted to date. I wanted to get to know each other. I wanted to, again, listen to your gut. Make sure that this is what you want. Marriage is a big deal. So trust in the timing of your life. don't feel the outside pressure, though obviously social media makes everything look perfect and you're like, everyone's getting engaged and everyone's dating someone. They're not. It's just social media making you think that. So, and listen to your gut. Like, if you're listening to this episode right now and you're like, Caroline, I've been dating someone for 7 years and it doesn't feel right. They don't listen to my goals and they don't support my like little silly hobbies. And I feel like our nights together, we're not communicating and we're not talking. You need to also listen to your gut, because you know what's right in your heart of hearts. Like, sometimes it's hard to face yourself, I guess is the word, and to listen to yourself, because sometimes you want to ignore it or you don't want to believe it. But really, like, listen to your gut and trust in the timing of your life. Because if you're in a relationship, you've been dating someone for a while and you're getting close to 30 and you're like, oh, well, they might not be the right person, but I just want to settle down. Don't settle. Don't settle. Strive for the perfect person for you, or someone that'll just really make you happy. Because at the end of the day, looks fade. All you have is each other and the other's personality and how they treat you. Like, that's what's gonna last forever. And then my Making It in Manhattan question is, what is something that has surprised you about marriage so far that maybe you weren't expecting? I guess this is silly, but I had read online and heard and seen TikToks that the first year of marriage was the hardest, like I mentioned in the beginning. So I guess I was going into it like a little worried, because Dave and I don't really fight that often. Obviously, like any couple, like we have moments where we need to talk about things and we, don't always agree on everything. But I was really going into it like a little bit scared, because people were like, the first year's the hardest. And I'm like, why? Like, why is it the hardest though? Like, is there something I'm not seeing? Is he gonna like change once we get married? Is there like something they're not telling me? And so I think the biggest thing I was surprised about is that the first year wasn't that hard. Like, yeah, we're married, but we're still the same people and nothing changed. Like, everything we talked about, we communicated literally everything before we got married. So there was not a single doubt in my mind that we weren't on the same page about anything. So we were both fully like, knew what we were getting into. And I think that's why I was like so scared, thinking that people were like, it's going to be so hard, but it really wasn't hard. Everything was fine. It flew by in the blink of an eye. And I'm like, now I'm worried. I'm like, oh my gosh, if every year is this easy and like goes this quick, as I mentioned, we're going to be married for like 20 years before we know it, which is scary, because I don't want time to go that fast. I want to savor it. I want to enjoy it. I really enjoy being married. And though I already knew Dave was like my person, there's like this extra level of like comfort and security that comes with now being married, and getting to watch like your husband wear a ring, because like Dave never wore jewelry or anything before our wedding. So yeah, that would be the biggest surprise for me. It's just that it really wasn't as hard as people would say, like were telling me it was. So again, listen to your gut. Don't let outside opinions affect you or scare you or stop you from getting married, because they get in your head that it is going to be really hard or scary or difficult. So trust in yourself and listen to yourself and listen to your partner. You know them better than anything, or better than anyone. So that is a wrap on this week's episode of Making It in Manhattan. I hope all of these tips and tricks and things that I've learned in my first year of marriage really help you. I still can't believe that it's been a full year, and hopefully I'll be back next year telling you what I've learned in 2 years of marriage. So I will see you guys soon.